Wahili Osman Haji walked for 22 days with 5 children and nothing but water for sustenance before giving birth to a son on July 8, 2011. She was on her way to the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya. Her story is far from rare, as the Horn of Africa has just experienced its worst drought in 60 years. This has created food insecurity and human health disasters, which are results of global climate change and worsening environmental conditions, and ultimately caused by wasteful energy habits practiced by individuals around the world. In East Africa, weather conditions over the Pacific, including a strong La Niña cycle, interrupted rains for 2 consecutive seasons. In many areas, the precipitation rate was less than 30% of the annual average. These rain shortages led to a widespread crop failure and loss of livestock, resulting in increased food prices. Compounded with falling wages, inhabitants are unable to sustain themselves or purchase the food they need. This creates a situation that lacks food security, defined by the World Health Organization as a time when all people have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. One of the most disastrous results of food insecurity is widespread malnutrition, or an insufficiency of one or more nutritional elements necessary for health and well-being. In southern Somalia, the malnutrition rate currently reaches as high as 50%. Somalia's political instability and resistance to foreign aid has forced 318,000 citizens like Haji to leave their homes for refugee camps in neighboring countries. A lack of food in these camps, coupled with overcrowding and unsanitary conditions, causes an increase in diseases such as cholera, malaria, measles, meningitis, and acute watery diarrhea. In particular, the onset of the rainy season has increased the prevalence of acute watery diarrhea, or AWD, a waterborne disease that worsens the effects of secondary malnutrition, which is caused by excessive excretion or a failure to absorb nutrients ingested. Now an epidemic, there have been 7,000 cases of AWD and 288 resulting deaths reported since November 1st by a single hospital in Somalia's capital. International aid groups and foreign governments are now responding to these disease outbreaks, and with the return of the rainy season, the most extreme food deficits have been mitigated. However, the extent of the damage to those living in the Horn of Africa is still unclear. Unfortunately, the situation in East Africa is not isolated. Food insecurity affects an estimated 792 million people worldwide, including 20% of the population in developing countries. To combat these human health concerns, we must better understand the causes of food insecurity. Climate change is one of the most significant factors in this global crisis. Emissions of carbon dioxide, an important greenhouse gas, are building up in the atmosphere and causing global temperatures to rise. Currently, CO2 accounts for over 80% of greenhouse gases. Over the past 1,000 years, increasing CO2 emissions have caused the global surface temperature to increase faster than ever. Although surface temperature fluctuates, the overall increasing trend is undeniable. Carbon dioxide is emitted naturally through human activities as a byproduct of energy consumption, and is then removed from the atmosphere by oceans and plants. The disequilibrium between emissions and absorption is the cause of the worsening greenhouse gas effect. These environmental trends have resulted in more severe weather patterns around the world. For example, areas that are currently hot and dry, such as the Horn of Africa, are experiencing reduced rainfall, shortened growing seasons, and more droughts. Worsening environmental conditions negatively impact food production. By 2090, maize yields are expected to decline by 20%, while bean yields will decline by 50%. Such changes set the stage for global crises such as food insecurity and subsequent human health disasters. Although food insecurity is not an everyday concern for most Americans, and Tufts students in particular, our daily behaviors contribute to the environmental changes that have resulted in food insecurity around the world. Some of our most wasteful habits include wasting energy in the form of electricity, heat, and food. 70% of the United States electricity consumption comes from buildings, which also account for 36% of greenhouse gas emissions. In the Tisch Library, the lights are never completely turned off, even after hours. Leaving lights on when not in use is an irresponsible energy habit that contributes to environmental changes. Another example of wasteful energy use occurs in dorms and classrooms at Tufts, which are kept very warm even when the thermostats are on the lowest settings. The production and transportation of our food also requires a significant amount of energy. Food waste is therefore not only wasting the meal itself, but also the energy required to bring the meal to your plate. In Tufts dining halls, plates on the dirty dish return are piled high with uneaten food. Meanwhile, about 792 million people worldwide are struggling to eat enough to survive. Minimizing our own wasteful energy habits is crucial in helping to alleviate the current environmental changes, which will ultimately result in fewer human health crises around the world.